Today, we are going to talk about grammar. We're going to talk about how I actually teach grammar skills in my classroom. We're going to go step by step. I'm going to show you an exact lesson that I do with my class and how all of my grammar lessons follow this exact same structure every time I teach a grammar skill. So if this interests you, keep on watching. Hey there, my name is Anna DiGilio if you're new here. I was a primary teacher for 23 years, and on this channel, I talk about all things teaching and learning. Primarily, we really dig in deep to streamlined and rigorous small group instruction. Typically reading, but we're going to be throwing some math in the mix too. So if these are the types of videos interest you, please click that subscribe button and the little bell next to it so you're alerted every time one of my new videos goes live. So what we're going to be talking about today is grammar. I'm going to tell you how I teach grammar in my classroom, and I do it the same way every single time I teach a new grammar skill, and it works every time. And my students really understand the concepts when I teach it this way because it always follows an I do, we do, you do structure. Right? So let's talk about one particular guided grammar unit that I did in my classroom. Now, we are going to talk about a unit called Types of Sentences and Punctuation Marks. So this was a grammar unit that I did in my classroom. Typically, this lesson would be a 2 or 3 day lesson. It would definitely not be done as an entire day. So I'm going to show you my lesson plan right here on the screen so you can see. So my lesson plans are always organized in the same way when it comes to teaching grammar skills. One of the first things I do when I am introducing a new grammar skill is I read a mentor text. I don't care how far to the ends of the earth I have to find a good mentor text, I will. So for this particular lesson, which was my types of sentences and punctuation marks, I used this book called Exclamation Mark by Amy Krause Rosenthal and Tom Lichtenheld. I used this for years in my classroom. I think I used this for probably 3 years in my classroom to teach punctuation marks and types of sentences because I teach it together. Punctuation marks and types of sentences, I teach it together in one unit. So my lessons follow the same structure every time for grammar, step by step. It's mentor text, mini lesson, guided practice, independent practice. Every single grammar lesson that I teach and that I even have to, that if you're interested in, which I'll show you a picture right here, every single lesson I have follows that structure. Mentor text, mini lesson, guided practice, independent practice. Every single lesson. Now, my guided practice always has some type of movement or group work or partner work embedded in it, always, because I don't want my students to sit on the carpet for 40 minutes during a lesson and not move. It doesn't work. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I teach how I taught this lesson, what I did in my classroom, and how well it worked when I was teaching this particular unit on types of sentences and on punctuation marks. So let's jump in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, again, my lesson plans are structured the exact same way every single time. So the first thing that I do is I will meet on the carpet, and I always write out everything I'm doing. I'm going to get on the carpet, and before reading this particular mentor text, I ask them if they know what a sentence is, because I want to know if they know what a sentence actually is. So we do a little bit of discussion. I try to elicit some information from them, and then we jump into the mentor text, exclamation point. If you've never seen this book or read this book, it is absolutely adorable, and it is perfect for teaching different type of punctuation marks and types of sentences. It is adorable, and the kids love it. So it's called Exclamation Mark by Amy Krause Rosenthal and Tom Lichtenfeld, and I will put a link for you down in the description below if you want to check it out, but it's one of my favorites. And additionally, don't leave me, my friends, because I've got a freebie for you at the end. So stick with me, and it's a good one. So I will read this mentor text, and as I'm reading it, sometimes I'll ask some guiding questions, and I'll ask some things like, why was the exclamation point sad? What punctuation mark became his first friend? What was the mark called? So these are some of the questions I have written down. What did the question mark always do? Why did the exclamation point yell stop? Why did the author write he didn't know he had it in him? So these are some of the questions I'll ask either during or after we read the book. So typically some of these things I'll ask after the book is read. So I would ask, why did the author write he didn't know he had it in him? Why did he say that? Why did the author write that? So we talk about a little bit about author's purpose here and what's happening in the story. I'll say, what types of things was the exclamation mark saying? Describe them. What did you notice about the things the exclamation mark was saying? So I'm asking guiding questions to elicit some discussion about the mentor text that we read. So now I'll ask them, okay, what kind of punctuation marks did we see in the story? We saw a period, we saw a question mark, and we saw an exclamation point. Great. So then I'll put up a chart, and I'm going to show you that chart right here, and I'll put up a chart that's got the period, that's got the exclamation point, and that's got the question mark. And then we're going to write down, I'm going to ask, what do these punctuation marks do? And when do we use them? So what we'll do is now we're going to talk about how we put question marks on the end of question sentences. And then I'm going to tell them on the chart paper, a question sentence is called an interrogative sentence or interrogative question. So I give them this information. I tell them a question sentence is an interrogative sentence. I use the vocabulary and I'll write it on the anchor chart. Then we'll talk about the period and we'll talk about where a period is used. It's at the end of the sentence, but what kind of sentence is a period used at the end of? Well, it's used at the end of a command sentence, which is an imperative sentence. I'm writing this on the chart. And they also use it in a declarative sentence. And a declarative sentence is like a telling sentence, like, I have a blue hat. I have a black sweater. It's a declarative sentence. It's just telling you something, right? But it could also be a command. Go clean your room. Go clean the dishes. Pick up your toys. Those are commands. And I'll give, or imperative sentences and commands. And I use these words interchangeably. It's so important. Command, imperative. Declarative, telling. Interrogative, question, right? And then we'll talk about the exclamation point is to show excitement or strong emotion. We write all of this on the chart and write the words to go with them. And I use those words interchangeably. Question sentence, interrogative sentence. Oh, this is a question or interrogative sentence. Oh, this is a command sentence because they're being forceful and telling you to do something. If I'm just telling you I have a cat, that's a declarative sentence. These are the ways I explain these types of words to the students. And again, we write everything on this chart and then we put it up and we leave it up because we want kids to see it and refer to it all the time, right? And I'll say, look at your chart, look at your punctuation chart. What kind of punctuation mark do you need at the end of that sentence? What kind of sentence is that? So I'm always referring to our charts around the room that we make during our mini lessons. So we create our punctuation mark together. And we'll even write a couple of sentences underneath. I'll ask them to give me some sentences, like give me a telling sentence or a declarative sentence. I have a cat. I have a blue shirt, right? And I'll write those down. And what I do is if a child says I have a blue shirt, I write I have a blue shirt on the chart, and then I write their name next to it, Christy. I want to give them ownership of that sentence. I want them to show that they took part in the lesson and they added something to it. I'll say, okay, who could give me a question sentence or interrogative sentence? Tell me, do you have a cat? I write it down. James, I write who wrote it. This is a great way to add some ownership to the lesson. All right, now, After we do our anchor chart together and we read our mentor text and we're talking about the different types of sentences, we've created the anchor chart. We have examples on the anchor chart. The kids understand each type of sentence on the chart, right? And we have examples. Now it's time for guided practice, okay? This is where my kids are going to get up. They're going to move around a little bit. Now, this takes practice and it takes time for you to also train your students to understand how to do this. So I'm going to show you a picture right here. What I did was I had multiple pocket charts in my classroom. And what I did was I typically put 4 to 5 pocket charts around my carpet, because around my carpet were bookshelves. So what I did was I put it, this was on my easel, but I'll show you a picture right here. I put book baskets on top of the pocket chart so they would lay against the bookshelves. Again, I'll show a picture up here. And what I did was I gave my students sentence strips. So I would give them sentence strips and I put them on colored cardstock. So I would use Astro Brights paper, because let's just be real. Like, we love Astro Brights, right? So I would make copies of sentences, of different types of sentences on Astro Brights paper, and I would make the kids go into 4 to 5 groups, where it was 3 to 4 students, 4 to 5 students in each group. They would get the sentences on colored paper. They would be laminated, and they would also get dry erase markers, okay? And what they would do, they'd also get a scissor, and what they would do is they would cut up the sentences, and they would then place them in their pocket charts together. They'd put the sentences together, and they'd have to talk to each other. Well, let's talk about what this sentence says. So if one of the groups is looking at this one, clean your room right away, and as you can see, there's a line here, right? So they put this in their pocket chart, right? Now they say to their group, okay, it says, clean your room right away. Let's look at our chart. Here's our chart, because it's up on the carpet, and they'll look at their chart and they'll say, well, what kind of sentence is it? Is it a question? No, they're not asking what, when, why, where, how, do, right? They're not asking those question words. And if they're telling you, clean your room, they're telling you what to do, are they just telling you, I have a blue shirt? Or are they saying, clean your room? How does your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle, how do they say clean your room, right? And it's usually pretty forcefully, because they're telling you, clean it. It's a command. And then what they'll do is they'll draw with a dry erase marker a period on the sentence strip. And then they put it, again, I'll show you right here, in the pocket chart. Now what I do is I give them 2 or 3 sentences that they have to figure out what the punctuation mark is. And then I give them, I think I gave them 2 or 3 blank sentence strips, okay? So then what they had to do was they had to first figure out what punctuation mark and what kind of sentence they had. They had to know the name of it, whether it was declarative, exclamatory, imperative, interrogative. They'd have to know, because someone was going, every person in the group had to share. So I would give them about 8 to 10 minutes for this. That's typically how I do it. This is the guided practice time. And they would be moving around the carpet. They were in one spot, because I had a pocket chart here, a pocket chart here, a pocket chart here, a pocket chart here. And if you don't have that in your classroom, just put it around the room. Let them spread out. Let them spread out. And then no matter where they are, if they have to bring their pocket chart to the front, then you do that. You make do with how your classroom was set up. The way my classroom was set up, all my bookshelves were around my carpet, so it was super easy for me to do activities like this, and kept them contained on the carpet, which is what I loved. Yes, it did get a little loud sometimes, because they were all there working together, but you had to see it. What was great was that when I was doing this lesson one year in my classroom, my principal walked in during this lesson. It was an unannounced pop-in lesson. It was an unannounced pop-in observation. Did not know she was coming, and she came in during this lesson, and she loved it. I loved it. She saw it pretty much from the beginning. We were just at the mentor, writing down our notes on our mentor mentor chart, or our eye chart, I call them. And then she saw us transition into the guided practice, and she just loved it. She stayed for probably 35 minutes easily. And I got a glowing observation, because she absolutely loved that the kids not only learned the concept, but then went into the guided practice. And then when I had our post-op, because we always had a post-op, she said to me, like, what happened after I left? And then that's when I would talk to her about the independent practice. And I would talk to her about how I would always do this during my grammar lessons. So this was an absolute hit for my observation. So I digress. But this is how I taught it. Now, after we were all done, I said, the way I know that you're done is that you're all sitting crisscross applesauce right in front of your pocket chart, and you're not talking. That's how I know you're done and you're ready to share. And then I'd say, okay, boys and girls, we're all going to share. Everyone in the group has to speak, and one person in the group will read one sentence. They'll tell us what punctuation mark they used, and they'll tell us what type of sentence it is. So maybe the first student gets up and goes, our first sentence is, clean your room right away. This is a command, so it's an imperative sentence, and we need a period. So that's what we did. We added a period because it's an imperative sentence, an imperative type of sentence. And that's how they would describe it. And then they would say, maybe the next person goes, our sentence says, will you go to the store with me? So this is our sentence, will you go to the store with me? This is a question sentence or an interrogative sentence, and we needed to put a question mark. And then the next child will go, and then they would read one of the sentences they made on the blank strips I gave them. So now they applied the skill with sentences I gave them. Now they had to really think through command, exclamatory, interrogative, imperative sentences, and say, okay, which one are we going to write? Let's work together. Let's figure out the sentence. Let's write it on the chart. Let's write it on the strip, and then add the punctuation mark to it. It was an incredible lesson, and my kids really learned and were able to apply and understood the different types of sentences and punctuation marks that would go on the ends of each of these sentences. So that's how my lesson always goes for grammar. We do a mentor text. We do a mini lesson that typically involves an anchor chart or something. Then we do guided practice where they're actively doing something, either with a partner, with a group. There's some type of activity there where they're moving around. They're doing something actively, because they're not just sitting there on my carpet for 40 to 45 minutes. They've got to be active. They've got to move around. They've got to work with friends. They've got to talk. They've got to interact. And that's how they learn to apply what I just taught them. And then after that, so after we would do the whole lesson, they got it, they did the guided practice. Now, if you have time, which I don't think you will, because that will typically take you probably about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. It kind of just depends on your class. If you have time, you could give them an independent activity, or you could now make this a day 2 lesson, where the next day you go back to your chart, you refer to your chart again that you made, you talk about the different types of sentences, what are they called, do a whole little review session, right? And then give them this independent activity to apply their knowledge from the day before. So I have 2 different types of activities. I'm going to show you those here. So one of the activities, now these were 2 independent activities that I would give them. Sometimes I did both. Sometimes I didn't. It really depends. It depends on my time. It depends on, do I want to give them something for morning work? Do I want to just have them work on this independently? It really just depends on my time. But there's always an independent practice. This can also be sent home for homework. It's a perfect type of homework assignment to apply their knowledge of what they did that day in school. It's a great assignment for homework. So what they have to do is on each page, and again, I'm going to show you this here. On each page, what they're going to do, this is the declarative page. That's why we call them tabbits. And they have to write down what a declarative sentence is here. Then they need to write 2 of their own declarative sentences. And then what they're going to do is they're going to take this whole strip that we have here, and this strip they're going to cut up, and they're going to glue them here. So what they have to do here is and there's 2 on a page, but each child gets 1. So they cut it and they say, clean your room. Now, I typically tell them to read the questions and then first write down the actual punctuation mark that goes with it. So I'm just going to do this very quickly. So clean your room. Oh, I think that's a command, so it's a period. Clean your room. Do you want to play a game? That's a question mark. I like ice cream. That could be just a telling sentence. Brush your teeth. That's a command. I got a new puppy. That's definitely an exclamation point because they're super excited about it. How are you feeling today? Question mark. It's an interrogative sentence. I won $100. Wow. That is so cool. So I always told my students to first go through these, write down the type of punctuation mark at the end, and then once you do that, start cutting them up. So clean your room is a imperative sentence because it's a command, right? So we know that's going to go on the imperative page right here. So now I would probably have them do all of these types of punctuation marks here, and then I would have them pick out the declarative sentences. So I know right here, I am 7 years old is a declarative sentence. It's also a telling sentence, right? So we do that. So then they cut them out and they glue them here. So not only do they have to read and figure out the type of sentence and add the punctuation sentence, but then they also need to figure out and match them against the words that we know. And again, our chart paper is always up for them to refer to. These are our declarative sentences. They write down what it is, and of course they can use our eye chart that we did the day before, or our mentor chart, however you call them. Write two of their own, and then go on, and then they glue these in. So the same thing the same thing they do on the interrogative page. So they write what an interrogative sentence is, they write their own, and then they glue and sort the sentences here. They have to write what an imperative sentence is, two of their own, glue them here, and then what is an exclamatory? Write two of their own and then glue them here. So this is an independent activity to apply their knowledge of the types of sentences that we did the day before. Again, this can be a homework assignment. Totally fine. This can also be a homework assignment. So you could do homework. It could be morning work. It could just be an independent activity after the lesson. It all depends on your timing and what type of time you have available to you to have your students apply their knowledge in an independent activity. The other type of independent activity I have two. So this is my sentence sleuth activity. Again, this is all part of my grammar unit. This is part of my types of sentences grammar unit. It's also in one of my grammar bundles as well. But then there's another activity. Now this activity is super fun because I love it. So what we have here is we have a sheet of paper that, this one actually doesn't have the print on the front, but here's the black and white copy, which is typically what you'll do. So there's lines on the inside, as you can see here, there's lines on the inside, and then there is a picture on the outside. So let me show you here. So we have lines and pictures. All right, so now what the students do is they now cut along these dotted lines. We just make them make the shape like this. So they cut along the dotted lines. So this one is, I can write declarative sentences. So then what they'll do is they keep cutting. And then, let me just cut this super quick. So as you can see, I'm just cutting on the dotted lines. And now we have this shaped booklet, right? So now with the shaped booklet, as you can see, there's lines inside. I'm going to show you a picture right here of a completed one. So they could color the outside, and inside they can write what a declarative sentence is. A declarative sentence is a telling sentence, and it ends in a period. And then they maybe we tell them to write 3 or 4 or even 5, depending on what the differentiation is that you want to do, right? So I have a blue shirt. My cat's name is Fred, right? I like the color yellow. So they write declarative sentences with periods. And this is considered an interactive notebook activity. So I have the same thing for declarative sentences, interrogative sentences, imperative sentences, and exclamatory sentences. So as you can see, again, this is part of one of my grammar units. I'll show that right here on types of sentences and punctuation marks. Again, all of my grammar units are organized like this because this is how I teach grammar. Mentor text, mini lesson, guided practice, independent practice. It's a very streamlined, organized, and consistent way to teach grammar in your classroom. So this is exactly how I teach types of sentences and punctuation marks. Again, this is the unit that you could find that in. Don't forget, I have a freebie for you. So you can absolutely, it is an entire grammar unit. I'm going to show you that right here. It's an entire grammar unit on teaching collective nouns. I'll show you a picture right here. And then what you can do is download that, totally free to you, and you could try it out in your classroom. And again, remember, when you're doing those guided practices, it's important that you give very specific expectations. Where to be, how to stand, how to work, even writing down some of the musts during guided practice, teaching them these skills, because if you just kind of let them go, we all know what can happen when you let them go, right? We want to be very consistent in what our expectations are when we're doing activities like this. My expectation for this particular activity was you're at your pocket chart, you're not walking around the carpet, you can stand up at your pocket chart, you can move around by your pocket chart, you're talking to your friends, you're interacting, you're cutting up the strips, you're using the dry erase marker. Everybody gets a chance. Everybody does some writing. We want to make sure we are consistent with our expectations when we're doing these types of activities so that it's not like a hot mess when you're starting your guided practice activity. So again, this is exactly how I structure every single one of my grammar lessons. That's it. And honestly, it's a great way to teach grammar. It's really a great way to teach any skill or strategy. To always bringing in mentor text, connecting it back to literature, creating your eye charts or anchor charts, however you call them. I tend to call them eye charts. You call them mentor charts, anchor charts, however you decide to call what your charts are. You make anchor charts or mentor charts or eye charts with your class, and then always have them do some type of activity, whether it's a partner activity or a group activity, because it really does help solidify the skills because they're talking. They've got that discourse between them in the group or with their partner, and they're talking to each other about what they just learned, right? That's an important skill that they have to do. Also working together, teamwork, right? All those skills are brought into a guided practice activity. And then giving them activities like this for their independent activity is a great way to make sure that they have learned the skill. Do you need to reteach or not? And then you can even address this lesson in your reading groups that week or the next week. You could say to them, point out an interrogative sentence to me. Point out a declarative sentence to me. Point out an exclamatory sentence to me. So what I love to do is after I teach a grammar lesson, I will infuse it into my guided reading lessons. So now when I'm in a small group and we've got a book and I'll say, okay, maybe we finish this, I say, quick, this is 1 minute. A 1 minute quick thing. Who can point out an exclamatory sentence? Who can point out an interrogative sentence? Who could point out a declarative sentence? I love to do that and connect it into reading. It's a great way of understanding, okay, we learned this here and now that lesson isn't over. You're constantly using those skills and strategies in all areas of the classroom. I talk about it in math too, right? Always we talk about it in math. So, that's it, my friends. That's one of the many grammar lessons that I do in my classroom. And again, you can definitely check out any of my grammar units here. And don't forget to download this freebie that I have right here for you in the comments below. It's free to you for use in your classroom, and you'll see it follows the same exact structure that I just taught you here today. Mentor text, an anchor chart, or creating a chart together with your mini lesson. Guided practice, independent practice. Every single grammar unit follows that exact system, the way I teach. So that's it from me today on grammar step by step in my classroom. I hope you enjoyed learning about how I teach grammar in my classroom and looking at this particular lesson that I have here on types of sentences and punctuation marks, because I really feel like formatting and structuring your lessons in this way really helps your students to understand and have a deep understanding of the concepts that you're teaching, and then the ability to now apply those new skills, because really that's the end goal, right? We want to learn it, apply it, use it, and bring it into our memory, right? That's the goal when we're teaching. So, again, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Again, please don't forget to download that freebie in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, please click that subscribe button and that little bell next to it so you are alerted every time my videos go live, because I'd love to have you as a new subscriber. And again, don't forget to comment below. I love to hear your comments or questions. It just makes me excited when I have my teacher friends comment on my videos. So again, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few little nuggets, and happy teaching. Bye for now, guys.